Hello and welcome in, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today and for being a part of WGU's first ever Cyber Week in celebration of Cybersecurity Awareness Month. My name is Hong Nguyen, and I'm a part of the Careers and Professional Development team. And I'm very excited to kick off today's session on AI security, the next frontier for cyber professionals, which is a highly discussed and rapidly evolving area in cybersecurity. We are so honored to have Chris Kimmerly, the head of AI security and strategy at Aon, present with us today. Chris is an insightful IT leader with a wealth of knowledge, and we're very appreciative that he is here with us to share his valuable insights with the WGU community. So with that, Chris, I will pass things over to you.
Thank you so much, Hong. And everyone, it is a pleasure to meet you. I'm on a level set. I am dealing with some incredible, unfortunate circumstance with weather. So I'm tethered to my phone and I'm going to do everything I can to deliver a seamless presentation. But if I cut out or you just lose me, you know why. With that out of the way, thank you for attending. Thank you for being here today. AI security and AI, just generally speaking, is the hot topic in most tech circles right now. You know, generative AI really exploded into the mainstream. So, what we're going to cover over the next hour are the challenges, the risks, and the opportunities that AI presents, and really in the lens of cybersecurity. I'm going to walk you through what it is like to actually lead this kind of initiative inside of an enterprise. And then I'm going to provide through this talk a lot of guidance that I think is grounded in practical consideration. So if you're thinking about building a team, if you're thinking about going after these initiatives, this will effectively be a great guide or cookbook for you to use moving forward. Okay. So first, this is me. I'm Chris, the same picture that Hong just had up. And my background is incredibly diverse. I served in the United States Air Force. I'm a retired veteran. I have worked in many high-tech organizations, including Hewlett Packard Enterprise. I've worked at Rackspace, a cloud company, DXC Technology, and Aon. You know, it's really an incredible time here at Aon with what we're doing in the space that we're playing in right now. A lot of what Aon focuses on is making better decisions with clarity, data, providing insights that make sense, that can help guide our clients through difficult challenges. Now, AI is no stranger to challenge, and it also is incredibly muddy. So getting to a place where we can provide clarity and guide on this topic, especially it's something as serious as security, is quite an honor, and it's an absolute privilege to actually go through this with the group today. So let's talk about the AI zeitgeist. First, everyone wants artificial intelligence. More often than not, they want generative AI. The FOMO energy or fear of missing out is very, very real. Now, most people actually already have access to artificial intelligence one way or another. We're going to go into the nuances of what AI means, traditional or gen. But for now, we're just going to talk about this at a general high level. For the most part, AI, as we understand it, is not monolithic. It's fairly easy to pull it down, whether it be a model or standing up an application or integrating other solutions into your technology. It's pretty simple to grab it and integrate it. It's a different discussion about doing that responsibly in a way that makes sense, but it's not monolithic. Now, to build it and to deploy it and to train it, it requires an immense amount of data, compute, and talent. Talent is something I want to stress to you through this discussion. Talent is an important element because labor impact is usually adjacent to the AI conversation. We need talent, whether it be security, whether it be machine learning experts, whether it be software developers. This world does not work without people at the center of it. So, as much as you hear with the hype on AI, just know that there is a shortage for this talent. There is a huge shortage for this talent. there are even fewer people in that talent pool who understand how to secure this technology. And that's global. So what does it mean to kind of take on that mantle and actually go after it? It's not a boring job. We'll start there. AI security in a nutshell actually is a rather immature and growing field of work. It's about making sure that systems are protected from threats, that the systems, which are non-deterministic, which means they're not going to behave predictably, that they're acting still within the boundaries of what we intend them to do. And most importantly, this very, very powerful technology is used responsibly. To do this, it involves securing data, securing the models themselves, the surrounding and serving infrastructure against a myriad of adversarial attacks, traditional security issues, potential misuse. There's a whole slew of things that you can go after depending on your frame. And AI security is really embedded throughout many frameworks. So if you go to NIST, you'll find things like trustworthy AI and security being a core pillar of that. If you go to some of the cloud companies like Microsoft or AWS or Google, you'll find concepts like responsible AI and security being a pillar in that. And then if you go to more alignment like frameworks, alignment being to have the AI systems or models behave in a way that is in accordance with our preferences and our values. There's a framework called RICE, Robustness, Interpretability, Compliance, and Ethics. In that framework also lies security. So you'll find AI security kind of sprinkled throughout most of the discussion around how to do this responsibly, how to do this in a trustworthy way, and how to do this in an ethical and compliant way. For me, my day usually starts around 4:30 a.m., which is nuts. I'm in the Pacific Northwest, so there's a little bit of latitude you can give with that. But I'm working with domestic and international teams from one thing or the next, whether it's an initiative that we're trying to push, whether we're getting, a bunch of eyes on a specific project or use case, or if we just need to coordinate on how we're going to go after testing, if we're going to need to go after security reviews for a specific pattern. There's a whole suite of different matters that can bring me up. But these things are always going to be a mix of planned and unexpected challenges. And so there's going to be this element of an AI security leader where you have to steer, you have to mentor, you have to be able to provide thought leadership. You're going to need to be able to be technically involved in the day to day. And you're going to have to think about solving problems both for your organization and for your customers. The two are going to go hand in hand. So doing this work is incredible. My day usually wraps up sometime around maybe 8 or 9 p.m. And there's a combination of like taking breaks, taking a piece where you can just step away. And I'm a dad, so my kids are going to come first. My wife especially is going to come first because you got to make her happy. And it's finding time though to still stay in this space. I'm going to go into what that means here as far as staying in the loop, in the focus. It is something for me. For the last 2 years, I have been running nonstop through the weekends and at night, either testing techniques or research. And that's really not something that I have done ever before in any other vehicle or any other silo or discipline in cybersecurity, ever. AI is moving so fast, it really does require this degree of love and passion that can bring you into it. And you have to enjoy what you do, get excited about it. For me, it's this real sci fi thing where we're kind of seeing so many different elements of my childhood, my dreams of the future kind of come to reality. SpaceX catching, was Mechazilla catching the super rocket engine. It was insane, or a super rocket booster. And AI coming about and being able to interact with this almost foreign intelligence. Again, amazing things are happening right now. It's a really exciting time to be alive. That keeps me going. That is my fuel source for this amazing future that we get to be a part of. Now, considering the wealth of information that's out there and what you have to look at, and there's no easy way to do this, your best approach if you're trying to understand what to focus on is to dive in, read widely, gradually develop an intuition for what constitutes value and relevancy. I'm going to give you some actionable strategies to kind of walk through this, but this is going to be a guideline that you can adjust and tune to your preferences. Make this work for you. The first thing you need to do is develop a set of trusted sources. So that's top tier conferences. You want to get familiar with specific organizations or leaders or research or academic leaders that are constantly being able to kind of articulate what's going on in this space or pumping out new research, things that would be most appealing to you and your industry and your organization. I would then set up alerts based on specific triggers. So if you care a lot about AI security, you might care about specific terminology around like new prompt injections for large language models and things like that that would jump to the top of the food chain. If you care about compliance, or maybe there's a concern around litigation or legal matters, maybe you care a lot about how AI is handling in specific cases, what new litigation has been raised about this. What are we seeing from the concept of whitewashing, which is a concept of taking generative AI and claiming it's in your product, but not actually putting it in your product. There's a whole slew of different considerations and different focuses that you can apply to AI. You're going to want to set up the specific kind of alerts and things that would grab your attention. Know that you're drinking from the fire hose. You're going to be dealing with a lot of nonsense. Not all of it's going to be good quality, but you still need to take the time to kind of dance in this pond for a bit before you get familiar with it. You're going to want to dedicate time to do that every single week. For me, it's every single day. You're going to need to get in there and make sure you have reserved time for yourself to spend just absorbing the content, wrestling with it a bit, and trying to understand it. Most importantly, engage with the community. Don't be in a vacuum. There's Meetup. There are other different forums online where you can go and just have a conversation. A lot of amazing discussions from machine learning or AI security or AI in general can happen across open Slack discussions, Discord, on the web, Reddit. There's a whole slew of different areas you can kind of go out and just start testing your knowledge. And everyone is trying to learn. There's nothing wrong with coming into this picture with a ignorant kind of I'm coming out of this fresh. I don't know what is or where to begin. Start from a position of being humble and go out to these communities when you're ready and just let them know that you're trying to figure out where to start, what to do. You'd be surprised what organic relationships can manifest from just putting yourself out there, and who might else be looking to your courage and say, that's quite special. Thank you. I was also feeling this. I just didn't say anything about it. And then deepen your understanding for what you learn or what you're trying to absorb. There's a bunch of techniques to do this. One technique that I particularly like is writing or learning through writing. And that is a concept of when you have a new set of things that you want to go after, take pen to paper. Start after you've digested it for a bit, start writing about it. Start, these are things that you don't necessarily want to put out into the wild, but just write on your side. And maybe use AI as a companion to kind of audit your comprehension. And if you do this enough, what you're going to find is you're really having to wrestle with these foreign concepts. And it's not going to feel great. It's not going to feel great. But day 2 will feel a little bit better. Day 3 will feel even better. And so on and so forth. These are things that you have to do with practice. Practice will make you better. The next line here, adaptability. I can't stress this enough. AI is truly a ubiquitous, nebulous almost technology. The way we see this applied is all over the map. There are some patterns that you can find across industry, but really you're going to find that organizations all behave a little bit differently. Now, I'm lucky because I am in a consultant role And I also get to provide guidance back into my own organization. So I get a good sense of what works, what doesn't, how this might shake out. I can test things from an enterprise scale that I really could not do in a different place. So you have these three makeups for organizations, and there's so many more, but for simplicity, we're just going to jump in. We have enterprises, we have startups, which is, could be a small, medium mom and pop, can take a bunch of different flavors. And we have regulated or highly regulated or heavily regulated organizations. All of them have a little bit of a different nuance. Large enterprises, they care a lot about technical debt. I describe working in an enterprise like being in Voltron. And I hope this lands with the team here. I hope this lands with the audience. But Voltron is a robot assembled from other robots. That's the simple part about it. You need to be able to pilot your robot well as work with a larger team and keep the bigger goal of the big robot on the top of your mind. You have to manage all of these components, and there is an art to that. It is not easy to do. You're going to be dealing with constrained resources despite your scale. You're going to be dealing with technical debt. And most of us probably understand what that means. And if you don't, that means that there are legacy systems in your environment that you just can't let go. You're going to need them. They're critical. Or you just don't have, or they haven't had the budget. There's also going to be a series of decisions that don't have a logical trail behind them. They just happen, and you're going to have to wrestle with those too. It's a difficult situation. And on the flip side of this, you have smaller organizations like startups. And I've had the pleasure of working with many founders and early stage ventures. All of them get to move quick. There's a significant lack of bureaucracy that sits within startups or smaller companies. It's great because they get to iterate, pivot, take risks a whole lot more freely than a larger organization or a heavily regulated organization. But the challenges there are you doing this in a way that's going to cause unnecessary churn? Are you going to have scaling problems? Have you made some choices about your app that maybe put security to the side? And often that is the case. How are you handling knowledge? How are you handling your growth? Is it unsustainable? And when startups can move quick, regulated industries are a whole lot different. There's very strict boundaries where compliance is non-negotiable. So for an example of this, you would have healthcare and finance. Two easy examples. Very strict rules to govern privacy, ethics, and compliance across technology and across the way it's applied. You'll find different regulations governing the use of that technology depending on the industry you dive into. But that means leading AI security in these environments is uniquely challenging. You have to have an understanding of your regulatory environment, the organization you're operating in, and then how these two things will mishmash. I got to spearhead with many other amazing colleagues the US Treasury's request for information on artificial intelligence impact on financial service, financial service industry, excuse me. We got to unpack on measures around adversarial attacks, vulnerabilities in pipelines, specific new emerging issues that we're seeing come up in this space, like model inversion. There's a whole slew that we get to provide, and that kind of brings me to a point on regulatory or regulated companies, and that is they get to jump in and actually weigh in on policy. They often get to inform the direction that will govern what their divisions or industries are going to be doing. It's a really interesting feedback loop, and it's something that's really unique to regulation or regulated industries in particular. But all of them want one thing. Everyone wants clarity. That's it. They want clarity to make decisions. They want clarity to understand. They want clarity to act with confidence. Everyone wants clarity. AI, I could not think of a more valuable resource than clarity right now. And this is putting all the jokes aside on compute, GPUs, it's really people want to understand. There's more, significantly more. I'd say by, 90 to 80% of the individuals in this space want to understand the space they're in more than anything else. And Clarity helps provide guidance and support to everyone in the organization. So that could be your leadership, that could be your technical teams. This is the mechanism that can keep everyone aligned. And without Clarity, it's really a guesswork operation. And you're just dealing with a whole sense of uncertainty. So where does Clarity come from? Now we're going to dive into this in a little bit, but Clarity really comes from rolling up your sleeves and making a concerted effort to understand the upper and lower bounds of this emerging technology. What can a large language model really do? What are they? Are they parrots? Are they just stochastic systems? What is RAG? What does it stand for? What is the limitations of this? How do we differentiate between traditional applications and a Gen AI application? All of these things you should be able to unpack leading AI security in your organization. And that brings me to the next point. You want to be fluent in artificial intelligence. This is very, very important. And that conversation starts with understanding the difference between traditional AI and generative AI. Traditional AI really has been around for, I think, since the 1950s is our most earliest version of AI. There are a bunch of different people that kind of provide a history lesson from a comp sci perspective on where we're going with this technology and where we've been. Suffice it to say that traditional AI is still very much around. It works with well-defined data, and then it provides predictable outputs. We use this to kind of forecast. Traditional AI is often called predictive AI. Now, believe it or not, generative AI is also predictive technically. But generative AI is different. It's non-deterministic. It's less predictable. It can actually create new content and respond in ways that are much more fluid. We're starting to get into a space where we're mimicking human behavior. And it's only really in the last maybe year that we're starting to come to a new paradigm that approaching generative AI from a perspective of people, meaning that what would we do to secure an individual? What would we do to protect an individual? Those kinds of paradigms are actually working quite well as translating over to how we would approach a generative AI system. Now, obviously, there's a lot of nuance that doesn't translate. But for the most part, conceptually, this actually works out pretty well. The unpredictable nature of generative AI means we're moving really into a space where we have to re-engineer how we approach this technology. Because it's not a simple, we just need to lock down the infrastructure, or we just need to have a secure app. You really have to think about how the model might behave to unexpected inputs. What if you try to trick the model? Does the model have the ability to make a function call back into the organization? Can it retrieve information for you? Does it represent your brand? Do you care about what that model might commit or say? All of these things are important. So fluency starts with understanding that traditional and generative AI are two different things. Artificial intelligence is the umbrella for all of this. And then we could go through a stack and where we arrive at deep learning and we arrive at generative AI. But there's a very complex family here, and we're focusing on one specific part of it. It's the hottest and greatest, which is generative AI. But know that it's not just that, and it's so much more. And the other applications for AI are substantial. They're very important. Some of them allow us to drive or have self-driving cars to the best of today's technology allows. But all of it is important. And so the next piece here is we need to start recognizing that we're in a platform shift. We're about to move to the next one, which is AI. And a platform in this context is really where we have an ecosystem that changes how we interact. And examples with this would be like social media or maybe e-commerce platforms. It is a foundation layer for which we build and develop and work together. It's quickly becoming that most things are AI or have AI in them, or they're being peddled as AI. We are getting to a place where this is just going to become normal. And we're not probably going to be so gung ho about saying AI. We'll just talk about the output or the end result. But an AI platform or this concept, everything is interconnected. And this is rapidly showing up in real world context. We're really approaching a space here where we're going to have agents that are built on top of a platform that is powered by models, infrastructure, and the whole 9 yards. You're going to have to think about how these things interact with each other and the different vehicles in which they could show up. From a technical standpoint, you're going to want to jump into the stack. And this is not easy. It's not going to be simple. It's something you should take with grace. It's something you should ease yourself into, but you have infrastructure considerations, literally hardware considerations, network considerations, compute resources. That's just the foundation. We also have to talk about PyTorch. If you go into security, you want to go into Pyrite, or you want to go into these other tools that are used to actually help you either do evaluations to test the actual security of the model or the surrounding infrastructure, depending on the use case and the tool. You have frameworks like the NIST Artificial Intelligence Risk Management Framework. You have MITRE Atlas, which is a threat framework specifically for AI from MITRE. All of these layers have to be peeled back one by one until you can kind of wrestle with it. And it's really important to do this. You'll likely be the individual that bridges the gap for a lot of discussions. So as you talk or AI comes up in the conversation, it might not necessarily be the appropriate context, or you might be kind of conflating terms. You can be that resource that helps steer and aligns the organization or the team on kind of what is right. And it's just as much about the people as it is the technology. And that sounds super cliche, but it's really true. AI security for almost all organizations is just something one person can't do by themselves. It's always going to be a team effort. So if you're trying to do this, don't go after this solo. You're going to either want to invest in people, bring together the right people, or look outside to bring in the right, vendor or partner that can help you kind of bridge the gap for whatever challenge you're facing. One of the most successful things I did at Aon was create a global sharing and knowledge environment. It was really, really impactful. So it allowed us to set up, knowledge sharing sessions globally. It allowed us to create a centralized repository for best practices, how we go after this space. It brought together multiple points of views, which expanded how we thought about specific problems and opened up our, what solutions would be applicable to any given problem that we've identified. When you can kind of tear down silos to a degree, you can focus on people, you really get into a place where knowledge flows far more freely and everyone grows as a part of that. It's not easy to do this. And so far, what I've found is you really have to push this. You have to push for people to come to the table. You have to push for people to kind of be in these spaces. Once you get there, it can be quite amazing. And whether it's building a team, whether it's starting a program, whether it's trying to build out one thing or the next, it's important to pick your battles. You cannot tackle everything at once. So focus on, for you, what would make the biggest impact. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither was your program. So prioritize on what matters most. AI security talent is scarce. We got to break down the silos. You need to pick your battles. And we think about AI, it's not universal. It's very similar to how the internet works. The internet is not one, it's three, roughly. You have multiple internets depending on the regions that you touch. Artificial intelligence is not one for one in every area of the world, nor are the laws or regulations that support or enforce or regulate them. So it's important to take that consideration. So if you take, as an example, the EU AI Act was passed, and it had some fairly stringent requirements, but it had a lot of criticism because it was just a little too vague in a few areas, one of them being around trustworthy AI. The problem with this is the EU AI Act and those who behind that legislation or that regulation really wanted to leave room open for the future. They didn't want to have to kind of go down this path again. They wanted a little bit of interpretation. But the companies that are kind of putting this out felt that the liability was too great. And this is really a debate in real time about overregulation. Is this overregulation? A lot of people thought this was going to go the way of GDPR, and that is a data privacy regulation. In that case, that actually made its way first over to the United States through California, through a regulation called CCPA. California actually had a bill out that was not the same, just like CCPA isn't the same to GDPR, but it was an AI piece of legislation, and it got vetoed. It did not go forward. And it's really just this sense of caution about over-regulating and stifling innovation. There are a bunch of different debates on what's right, what's not, but nevertheless, we have to think about the regulatory contrast here. Not everyone is going to be dealing with the same set of rules. And if you're going to be supporting in a global capacity, you're going to need to think about this. You have to build relationships. If you're going to support or drive AI compliance, you need people that can speak to this a lot better than you can. You need your organization's data privacy officer. You need an AI compliance leader, internal audit, your general counsel. And if you don't have these things, again, there are either partners, vendors of the like that you can leverage to kind of conquer some of these hills depending on your context. But you need to have people who understand what you're trying to do and will work with you, vice versa, so that you can both kind of go out the door in a way that makes the most sense for your organization. You have to be cohesive. Remember that AI is going to find its way in everything. And so you're going to want to have people that you work with all throughout your organization. You're going to need to know your limits. That doesn't stop with you, that extends to your team. You need to set realistic goals and boundaries. A lot of what we do in this specific space is ambitious, and you should stay ambitious. You should want to change the world, but you should want to work within your means. Be practical. You always trying to do too much backfires. It's good to make deliberate decisions to scale back. So if you're managing multiple initiatives and you're focusing on delivering, high quality results. So if you're in a consulting space and you're trying to provide your client with, outstanding work products, if you're working within your organization and you're trying to make sure you put out an incredible release, in either case, focus on what you can and set realistic goals. If you can prioritize the quality, the high quality outcomes, your clients, your colleagues, and you will thank yourself. It's a win-win scenario to do this. Now, not everyone can do this. Not everyone can push back. I am in the same boat. So in those instances, you're going to hear this again, we need to set up allies. Find people that we can lean into that are going to be here to help us through this space, that are going to be able to walk through different challenges with you and help you figure out how best to tackle a specific challenge or leverage resources to that end. It's important to find people who can back you up in these corners. At the same time, that might not always be an option. And when you're pushed, you might just have to get creative. Not all constraints are bad. I literally deal with this on a daily cadence. You just have to work with it. I find, and I don't invite them, but I do find that constraints force me to think outside the box. Constraints force me to think in a way that's a little bit more unique. I innovate. It forces me and the team to actually go for things that we didn't think were possible. And I think a lot of history shows that when we really push the boundaries here, we find success. But everything is grounded in pragmaticism. So this actually wraps up for the most of our talk here. Um, I'm glad. I'm hoping the connection worked as long as it did. It was a little bit faster than we were actually going to plan, but we I had some technical difficulties getting up. The thing I would point everyone to is first, if you have some additional questions, or if you want to dive into anything in a little bit more detail, I post pretty regularly out on LinkedIn, and I have a Substack. All that information is free. Just grab it. No attribution, whatever would help you just kind of make sense of the world that we're in. And if you have any questions, or if you just want to pump it out into this chat, I'm happy to take them right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. That was a lot of great information. We had good engagement in the chat. I know folks were saying really good advice and tips there. So if anyone has questions, feel free to enter those into the chat, or if you'd like to come off mute, just simply raise your hand and we can get you off mute there. And as we move into the Q&A portion here, just as a quick reminder, we do encourage you to ask questions that spark meaningful discussion and provide valuable insight for everyone. So please focus on questions that are relevant to the topic and will benefit the entire group rather than specific or personal and individual situations. That would be great. And that would help us focus on a richer and more engaging conversation. Let's see, we got lots of great presentations, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your time. We got a question here from Jose. What are the fundamental skills needed to break into AI security?
That is such a good question. And I am such an ass, pardon my French, for not actually including this in this presentation, in this talk. So AI security, I mentioned at the beginning, is a nascent field. Like it's merging. It has a whole bunch of different forks. The way to break into this depends on your specific context. If you're more of a generalist, so you deal with governance, risk, and compliance, that can be challenging to get into AI security. You're going to want to find a path that would bring you right along there. There could be new opportunities where you have responsible AI development. There could be policy work. There can also be compliance work in this space. I would lean into those vehicles and find that path forward. If you want to look at other areas where you're talking about offensive security, where you have a lot of attacks against AI, jailbreaks, other adversarial techniques, data poisoning, things like that, you're really talking about the camp of offensive security. There's a whole camp for this, but you want to get into penetration testing, other forms of testing, red teaming, et cetera. Those are going to be very important. And then you have strategy at a higher level too. But all of this, there's not necessarily a clear path to break through. It's very, very early right now for AI security. What I would frame this as, look at security and its evolution over time, and you'll find parallels in AI security. An example of that would be today, we are learning the lesson again about deprioritizing productivity. So that is to say, we have all come and gotten used to ChatGPT. Now, if we want to bring something like that, a general purpose chatbot, into our org, we're going to want to ground it. We're going to want to put in safeguards. We're going to want to put in filters, input, output validation. The more you layer on this, the less productive it becomes, the longer the latency increases, and then it's not used. And so security cannot take precedence over priority. You want to look at things like asynchronous streaming for certain actual technical implementations on that technology. You want to look at things that will limit the actual latency that would hit that specific model. But my point here is focus on practical considerations. They'll go much further and focus on things that will not be an anti-pattern or work in the benefit of cybersecurity. A lot of lessons, again, are being learned again. I hope that's not the best answer, but I hope that's somewhat helpful.
Thank you so much, Chris. A lot of more thank yous. And then we do have a question here from Nicholas. Do you have any resources where we can learn more about AI? I did drop your LinkedIn in the chat for folks to follow there. And then we did have a resource shared by Joe earlier as well. But any other additional resources you'd like to mention, Chris?
Oh, absolutely. I can go all day about this. So when we think about resources that you want to tap into, I'm going to start you off with a traditional book. If you're just getting into this and you kind of want to wrestle with AI, you want to understand it, pick up Co-Intelligence from Ethan Mollick. Ethan Mollick is a professor at Wharton University. The book is fantastic. It's grounded. It currently gets my #1 recommendation for entry into this space. He'll introduce concepts like inviting AI to the table. And that is the second point I would bring up. Invite AI to the table. Now, do this in a way that is ethical and responsible, but you can take this to your personal life. When ChatGPT 3 was out, as an example, one of the things I did was start figuring out how I could apply it to a Disney trip with my family. And we just used really creative, interesting ways to find, shortcuts through the space, to kind of go after, different venues that were going to be popular. There were limitations back then, but it was a really novel, fun way to play with it and to get used to it. And that's really what you need to do. You need to get used to it. And as you get used to this surface level kind of app level experience, if you feel embroiled, go after the technical side. Go look at building a custom app. There are so many GitHub projects out there that can get you started. It's not difficult to pull down a project that can allow you to interface with your computer, without remote code execution, but just being able to interact with an advanced model and talk to it with your own peripherals is quite a unique experience. So that's the first part, is the book. Go out to GitHub projects if you want to look at some technical implementation on how you can actually build applications around this. Another thing I would say is you're not going to find a ton of material on AI security, and it's just unfortunate. I've done my best, without trying to self-promote here, I've done my best to kind of collapse some of this into different articles that I put out there. But what I would encourage you to do is first try using Claude, Mistral's, ChatGPT, whatever you can that's at your fingertips. Use this democratized knowledge to elevate your learning. Do not use it as a source of truth and an authoritative source at that. Do not do this. What you're going to find is if you do that too much and you lean into AI as this resource and kind of end all be all for information, you're going to find that you're actually talking or learning in the past. These models were all trained to a certain point in time. There's a knowledge cutoff, and they don't know some of the more recent breakthroughs in the last year or two, or they're just not really concrete in their head. And you can test this as an example by asking any of these models how high quality images are made. And they'll almost always tell you that they're made with GANs, or generative adversarial networks. There's a whole rhyme and reason for this, and it was shortcut here is it was used back then. It was a very popular technique, and what's pretty much dominating this space now is a new one called diffusion. And diffusion models are effectively what most people interact with right now for creating high quality images on demand. So that's part two, or part three. So use AI to kind of bridge some of these gaps as a vehicle to kind of indicators of where to go, start exploring new topics. There is coursework that's starting to be developed around this. So pay attention to those providers that you trust. WGU is an example. Look towards companies like ISC Squared, other places where AI security is going to be promoted and knowledge is going to be shared. If you want to go into domain specific things, there's some great material on Amazon in particular. Microsoft has done a great job at pumping out free training and a whole lot of technical documentation on their specific implementation and their considerations on AI. I think Amazon goes a little bit more into the practical side, and it's very deep. They're not great at talking about how much thought leadership they put out, but it is substantial if you go look for it. I think that's like a good running start. And if you have questions on the side too, feel free to, ask, and I can point you to some more areas.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. Those are great. Another comment slash question here from Josh. Isn't prioritizing practicality over everything else exactly what the first computer slash ARPANET slash internet computer engineers prioritized, which led to the security issues we face today?
I you will find many patterns like this right now happening in AI. It is a very interesting exercise, but yes, you will find decisions to move fast and break things. You will find decisions. These things are all going to come back around, and it's probably not going to be the most clean event, but they'll probably be messy. But there's a reason why we do these things. And we are better for having gone through them. It's unfortunate to see us kind of relive and relearn these things in AI all over again.
Thank you, Chris. Any other questions? We have some time for a couple more questions. Feel free to put them through the chat, or you can raise your hand here and we can take you off mute. One question that came to mind was, what aspect of AI security do you find most challenging, but also most rewarding?
That's almost an interview question. That's a good question. It's a tough question. I think the most rewarding aspect is AI truly does feel like it's pushing the boundaries or the frontier forward. We do feel like we're seeing things that were, as I alluded to before, science fiction. I find that kick incredibly enjoying. I just love seeing what the technology can do and where it can go. I also take immense satisfaction in safeguarding this technology that has a meaningful purpose. So if it's used for advanced medical research, or if it's going to help an organization just be more productive, or it's helping, manufacturing in a different space, there's these applications, all of them, they need to be locked down. So being a part of that experience and knowing that they're using this in a way that it kind of gives them the confidence to do it right, do it smart, be safe, that feels great. That feels great. The challenging side about AI is largely the fact that it's just such a hot topic. Everyone really does want a piece of it. And you have a flood of issues that are coming right now because of that. You have some who want to capitalize on this and feel like AI is a thing that they want to, put out into their marketing or put out in their products, but there's nothing there. It's a weird one, but it's actually a real big problem. Another one, which is equally common, is seeing large language models be integrated into existing applications without any notice, any at all. So, Adobe did this with Acrobat. Acrobat suddenly had the ability to talk to your PDFs. That's not running on your device, that's going out. So, no way to turn that off. We had to go and, figure out what setting in the registry would actually disable that function. So the most frustrating thing is really the velocity and some of the reckless behavior, depending on who we're looking at, but some of the reckless behavior with these organizations and their implementation with AI. There really is no buffer. It just happened. And you can feel especially bad for any kind of higher education institute. I have, just with my middle school, high school area and where I live, I've gone to the school and talked to the teachers, helping try to guide their thinking through how this technology can be applied in the classroom, how not to think about it, such as AI detection tools and little things like that. It's the frustrating part again is just the velocity here, the speed.
Thank you, Chris. I hear from Josh. Do you think nation states will eventually have their own AIs at war with each other, essentially removing the human element of warfare almost entirely?
So know that looking too far into the future is very hard. But yes, I do. I think we're seeing the kind of mix in actual warfare with, there's like flash warfare or proxy wars. We have a bunch of different armies filtering into other armies to cause some challenges. We're seeing experiments with AI and warfare happen real time. Some of that, you can look at Palantir's defense intelligence platform. Yeah, it's pretty nuts. It's gonna shake you. It's the first time I felt the Terminator sensation, where you're effectively an AI or a large language model is helping you plan and execute operations that will result in lives lost or taken. So it's not fun. But yes, adversaries are already leveraging the technology. On a quick little note on that, what we're seeing there is it's getting more difficult to actually attribute attacks to specific groups. It's kind of this great equalizer for people who use the technology, and it goes the other way around. Everyone kind of has a similar voice and tone. And so it's difficult in that context. But I would really be surprised if nation state groups do not have their own model. I would be very surprised. I don't actually think you need to do that. If the model can be brought down and you can use it, whatever built-in content moderation it has, you can brute force it very easily. These models come out of the box with content moderation built into them, safety measures built into them. You can brute force your way past those. Right now, it's well known that you can do this. So you don't necessarily have to invest and spin up your own model. You could pull down an open source model. You could pull down Llama 3.2, or you could fine tune another model that's even more uncensored and leverage it for your own ends. This is happening at the nation state level. I would be surprised if it's not happening already.
Thank you, Chris. If anyone has further questions, you can always email me and I'll make sure to filter those through to Chris as well. I did share his LinkedIn in the group chat, and in the follow-up email here with the recording and the survey, I'll share that Chris's LinkedIn again as well. So we can go ahead and conclude today's session. Thank you all for attending and for your great engagement. Chris, you talked about community being important, and I really saw that today from our attendees, not just engagement wise, but sharing resources with each other and perspective as well. So that was fantastic to see. As mentioned, we'll be sending out the recording along with the survey, and we really appreciate it if you can complete that survey for us. We also like to extend a sincere thank you to Chris for your wonderful insight into AI security. We are truly grateful for you spending time with us, especially with the weather and the network challenges, and you still making it work with us.
I
And
can't
for your
believe we made
great,
it through.
yeah,
We
thank
made
you
it
so
through all the
much.
way. I really
Yes.
thought I was going to go down. No,
And
it was an honor. Thank you very much.
yes, yeah, and I'm sure our attendees too, but on our end, your sound is like crystal clear, like podcast value type of share today. So thank you so much, Chris, for your wonderful insight and for joining us today. Your contribution has made such an impact in our students and alumni, and we're just so grateful. So thank you all again for attending, all of the great thank you messages coming in as well, and then wishing everyone a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you again.
Thanks. Take care.